The Smith family couldn't believe their luck. Tom, Sarah, and their 8-year-old son Timmy were about to become the first humans to vacation on Crystal Planet, the jewel of the Galactic Empire. As their sleek space shuttle approached the glittering world, Timmy pressed his nose against the window, his eyes wide with wonder. "Look, Mom, Dad, it's all shiny," Timmy exclaimed, pointing at the planet's surface that seemed to twinkle like a giant disco ball. Sarah smiled, ruffling her son's hair. "That's right, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about. We have to be very careful down there. Everything is made of crystal." Tom nodded, his face serious but excited. The tour guide said some of those crystals are older than Earth itself. We're lucky to even see them. As the shuttle landed with a soft hiss, the Smith family joined a group of other tourists from across the galaxy. Timmy stared in awe at the strange aliens around him. Some with tentacles, others with multiple eyes, and a few that looked like walking plants. A tall, slender alien with shimmering blue skin stepped forward. "Welcome, honored guests, to Crystal Planet. I am Zix, your guide for this historic tour. Please, follow me, and remember, touch nothing." The group moved slowly through the Crystal City. Buildings towered above them, each one a masterpiece of light and geometry. The ground beneath their feet was smooth and clear, revealing intricate crystal formations deep below. Timmy walked between his parents, trying his best to be good, but everything was so amazing. He wanted to touch the crystals, to see if they felt as cool as they looked. His parents kept a firm grip on his hands, sensing his excitement. As they entered a vast chamber, Zix's voice took on a reverent tone. "Behold, the Hall of Ancients. Each crystal here holds the wisdom of a long-dead civilization. Some are over 1 billion years old." The tourists gasped in collective awe. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a crystal that glowed with an inner fire. It pulsed gently, almost as if it were alive. "This," Zix said, gesturing to the crystal, "is the heart of galaxies. Legend says it contains the knowledge of the universe's creation." As the group crowded around for a better look, Timmy felt a tug on his shoe. He looked down to see his shoelace had come undone. Not wanting to bother his parents, he bent down to tie it. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Timmy straightened up, his elbow bumped against a small alien child behind him. The alien child, not expecting the contact, stumbled forward. Its tentacle-like arm shot out, trying to regain balance. But instead, it struck the pedestal. The heart of galaxies teetered for a moment, then fell. Time seemed to stop as the priceless artifact tumbled through the air. Every eye in the room was fixed on its descent. Then, with a sound like 1,000 windows shattering at once, it hit the crystal floor and exploded into 1,000,000 glittering shards. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Then chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Zix was shouting something in a language the translators couldn't keep up with. The other tourists were screaming, pushing to get away from the scene. But worst of all were the guards. They seemed to materialize out of nowhere, their crystalline armor gleaming menacingly. Their faceless helmets turned towards Timmy, who stood frozen in terror. "No, it was an accident," Sarah cried, trying to pull Timmy behind her. Tom stepped in front of his family, arms spread wide. "Wait, you don't understand. He's just a child," Tom pleaded. But the guards weren't listening. With movements as cold and sharp as the crystals around them, they raised their weapons. What happened next would be debated in the galactic courts for years to come. Some would say it was a tragic misunderstanding. Others would call it an unforgivable act of cruelty. But to the Smiths, and soon to all of humanity, it was nothing short of murder. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the lead guard's weapon. It passed through Tom as if he wasn't even there, striking Timmy squarely in the chest. For a moment, the boy's body glowed with an unearthly light. Then, like the heart of galaxies moments before, he simply shattered. Sarah's scream echoed through the crystal halls, a sound of such pure anguish that even the alien tourists felt their hearts break. Tom fell to his knees, trying desperately to gather the glittering dust that had been his son moments before. The guards stood impassively, their weapons still raised. Zix, the tour guide, had vanished. The other tourists huddled in corners, too shocked and frightened to move. It was over in minutes. More guards arrived, herding the shocked tourists away. Tom and Sarah were roughly separated from the group, still clutching at the sparkling remains of their child. As they were led away, Sarah's quiet sobs echoed through the now empty hall. News of the incident spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On Earth, the reaction was immediate and intense. Grief turned quickly to rage as the details emerged. A human child, killed for an accident. The Galactic Empire, unapologetic in its brutality. In homes, in offices, in the streets, humans gathered around screens, watching the shaky footage captured by other tourists. They saw Timmy's last moments, saw the fear in his eyes, saw the callous indifference of the guards as they fired. Governments around the world issued statements of condemnation. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session. Diplomats were recalled. Trade agreements were suspended. But for the average person on the street, it wasn't enough. They wanted justice. They wanted revenge. As night fell on Earth, vigils were held in every city. Candles flickered in the darkness as millions mourned a boy they had never met. In New York, in Lagos, in Tokyo, in Sydney, the message was the same. This cannot stand. But in secret facilities around the world, hidden from public view, another response was taking shape. In hardened bunkers and underwater bases, lights flickered on, computers hummed to life, and in massive hangars, long kept dark, giant shapes began to stir. The next morning, as Earth's citizens awoke to another day of mourning, they were greeted by an extraordinary sight. The skies above every major city were filled with ships. Not the small shuttles or cargo vessels they were used to seeing, but massive, sleek warships, dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer long, their hulls gleaming in the morning sun. On every screen, on every device, a message played. It showed the President of the United Earth Council, her face grim and determined. Citizens of Earth, she began, yesterday we witnessed an unforgivable act. A child of Earth, an innocent, was murdered by the Galactic Empire. They thought us weak. They thought us powerless. They were wrong. The camera panned out, revealing that she stood on the bridge of one of the massive ships. For decades, we have prepared in secret, building a fleet to defend humanity against any threat. Today that fleet stands ready. 700,000 ships, crewed by Earth's finest, armed with technology that will make the Empire tremble. Her eyes blazed with a fire that every human watching felt in their own hearts. To the Galactic Empire, we say this: justice is coming. For Timmy, for humanity. We are no longer your submissive new neighbors. We are your reckoning. As the message ended, the dreadnoughts began to rise. In perfect formation, they climbed into the sky, punching through the atmosphere and into the black of space. The age of human innocence in the galaxy was over. The Empire had killed a child. Now they would face the fury of an entire world. On Crystal Planet, in a dark and quiet cell, Tom and Sarah Smith huddled together. Their tears had long since dried, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. As the first reports of Earth's fleet reached even this distant world, Sarah looked at her husband. "They're coming," she whispered. "For Timmy." Tom nodded, his eyes glinting like steel in the dim light. "Let them come. Let them all come." And across the vastness of space, 700,000 engines burned bright, carrying with them the hopes, the dreams, and the vengeance of humanity. Earth stands up. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with tension. Leaders from every nation sat around the massive circular table, their faces grim. On the giant screen at the front of the room, The image of Timmy Smith's final moments played on a loop. The sound was muted, but everyone could still hear the boys scream in their minds. President Maria Chen of the UEC stood, her normally calm demeanor replaced by barely contained fury. We've all seen the footage. We've all felt the pain. Now, it's time to act. The room erupted in shouts and arguments. Some called for immediate war. Others urged caution, fearing the might of the Galactic Empire. Through it all, Chen remained standing, her eyes scanning the room. Finally, she raised her hand, and silence fell. We are not here to debate whether we should act, but how. The Empire has shown us what they think of humanity. It's time we show them who we really are. A door at the back of the chamber hissed open. All heads turned as a man in a lab coat hurried in, clutching the datapad to his chest. It was Dr. Amit Patel, Earth's leading expert in xenotechnology. "Madam President," he said, slightly out of breath, "it's ready. All of it." Chen's eyes widened. "You're certain?" Patel nodded, a mix of pride and worry on his face. 700,000 ships, fully armed and crewed. The Lazarus Project is complete. The room exploded into chaos again. For decades, rumors had circulated about a secret military project hidden from the public eye. But this was beyond anything they had imagined. Chen's voice cut through the noise. "Enough. Dr. Patel, explain to everyone what we're dealing with." Patel stepped forward, his fingers dancing across his datapad. The screen behind him came to life, showing schematics of a massive warship. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dreadnought-class starship, 1 kilometer long, armed with weaponry reverse-engineered from a dozen alien civilizations. Each one is capable of reducing a small moon to rubble." He swiped, and the image changed to show a vast shipyard hidden inside an asteroid. "We've been building these in secret for the past 50 years, ever since we first made contact with the Empire and realized how outmatched we were." Another swipe, and a galactic map appeared, dotted with thousands of red points. "These are the current positions of our fleet. They're hidden in asteroid fields, gas giants, and even in hyperspace bubbles. At a single command, they can converge on any point in the galaxy within hours." The room was dead silent now, every eye fixed on the screen. Patel continued, his voice growing stronger. "We built this fleet to defend Earth against any threat. We hoped we'd never have to use it. But now—" He trailed off, looking at the frozen image of Timmy Smith. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Now we have no choice." President Chen stepped forward. "Thank you, Dr. Patel. Now we must decide. Do we unleash this fleet? Do we risk everything in a war with the Empire? Or do we stay silent and let them think they can kill our children without consequence?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, one by one, the leaders began to stand. It started with the representative from Nigeria, then China, then Brazil. Soon, every person in the room was on their feet. Chen nodded, her face set in grim determination. "Then it's decided. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us all." She turned to her aide. "Prepare a broadcast. I want to address every human in the galaxy." As the council chamber emptied, plans were set in motion across the planet. In hidden bases and secret facilities, soldiers and pilots who had trained for years in silence were finally given their orders. Massive hangar doors groaned open, revealing the sleek, deadly shapes of the Dreadnoughts. In orbit, the small defense fleet that Earth had maintained for show suddenly came alive with activity. Smaller ships darted between the larger vessels, carrying supplies and last-minute additions to the crew. On the moon, in a bunker deep beneath the surface, General Sandra Martinez stood before a sea of holographic displays. Each one showed a different part of the mobilization effort. She watched as green lights blinked on, signaling ships ready for battle. "Status report," she barked. The young lieutenant stepped forward. "Ma'am, 80% of the fleet is ready to launch. The rest will be combat ready within the hour." Martinez nodded. "And the Empire? Any response to our communications blackout?" "Nothing yet, ma'am. It seems they still think we're a minor, primitive species. They haven't even increased patrols in our sector." A grim smile crossed Martinez's face. "Good. Let them keep underestimating us. It'll be the last mistake they ever make." Back on Earth, in living rooms and public squares, on personal devices and giant screens, humans everywhere watched as President Chen's broadcast began. "Citizens of Earth," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Yesterday we witnessed an unforgivable act. A child of Earth, an innocent, was murdered by the Galactic Empire. They thought us weak. They thought us powerless. They were wrong." The camera pulled back, revealing that Chen stood on the bridge of a massive warship. Gasps of awe and shock echoed around the world. "For decades we have prepared in secret, building a fleet to defend humanity against any threat. Today that fleet stands ready. 700,000 ships, crewed by Earth's finest, armed with technology that will make the Empire tremble." Images flashed across screens worldwide. Endless rows of massive ships, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Pilots in sleek uniforms, climbing into cockpits, weapons of unimaginable power, humming to life. Chen's eyes blazed with a fire that every human watching felt in their own hearts. "To the Galactic Empire, we say this: justice is coming. For Timmy, for humanity. We are no longer your submissive new neighbors. We are your reckoning." As the broadcast ended, a roar went up from every corner of the planet. In New York and Nairobi, in Tokyo and Tehran, humans poured into the streets. They cheered, they cried, they hugged strangers. For the first time since the tragedy, hope burned bright. In orbit, the first wave of dreadnoughts began to rise from their hidden bases. They moved with a grace that belied their massive size, forming up into perfect attack formations. Smaller, faster ships darted between them, relaying orders and running last-minute diagnostics. On the flagship, the UES Avenger, Admiral John Hawkins stood before his crew. Men and women from every nation on Earth looked back at him, their faces a mix of determination and fear. "I know you're scared," Hawkins said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive bridge. "Hell, I'm scared too. We're about to take on the biggest, baddest empire in the galaxy. But remember why we're here. Remember Timmy Smith. Remember every human who's been pushed around, laughed at, or treated like dirt by the Empire." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They think they know us. They think we're weak, divided, easy prey. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far." A cheer went up from the crew, echoing through the ship. Hawkins smiled, then turned to his communications officer. "Send the signal. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump." Across the fleet, engines flared to life. Space itself seemed to bend and warp around the massive ships. Then, with a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun, they were gone. In the Galactic Empire's capital, on a planet so old its original name had been forgotten, Emperor Zegskar lounged on his crystalline throne. Before him, a holographic display showed the latest reports from across his vast domain. A small alert blinked in the corner, indicating a message from the human sector. Zegskar waved a tentacle dismissively. Probably another pitiful request for leniency, he gurgled to his advisors. "Let them beg. It will teach them their place in the galaxy." Suddenly, the throne room's doors burst open. A junior communications officer rushed in, his exoskeleton clicking frantically. "Your Majesty, urgent news from the human sector." Zegskar's eyes narrowed. "Speak quickly, before I have you ejected into space for this interruption." The officer's voice trembled. "Sire, the humans, they've vanished. Our outposts report that all communication with Earth has ceased, and our long-range scanners, they're detecting massive energy signatures. Thousands, no, hundreds of thousands of ships, appearing out of nowhere. For the first time in centuries, Emperor Zegzekar felt a flicker of fear. He leaned forward, all four of his hearts pounding. Impossible. The humans are primitives. They have no such fleet. But even as he spoke, alarms began to blare throughout the palace. On every screen, on every holographic display, the same image appeared: a vast armada of ships, unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, emerging from hyperspace at key strategic points throughout Imperial space. And at the head of each fleet, a message played on a loop: President Chen's face, grim and determined, speaking words that would soon be seared into the memory of every being in the galaxy. To the Galactic Empire: you killed our child. Now face our vengeance. As panic spread through the Imperial capital, as alien races long oppressed by the Empire looked to the skies with hope, as the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen began to unfold, one thing became crystal clear to everyone watching. Humanity had stood up, and the universe would never be the same. The big fight. The vast emptiness of space erupted into chaos as Earth's massive fleet emerged from hyperspace. 700,000 ships, each a kilometer long, appeared simultaneously at key points throughout the Galactic Empire's territory. The sudden arrival of such an enormous armada sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On the bridge of the UES Avenger, Admiral John Hawkins stood tall, his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. It showed the positions of Earth's forces, represented by blue dots, surrounding the red markers of Imperial strongholds. "All ships reporting in, sir," his communications officer announced. "We've achieved complete surprise. The Empire's forces are scrambling to respond." Hawkins nodded grimly. "Send the message to all fleet commanders. Operation Thunderclap is a go. Hit them hard, hit them fast. Show no mercy, but remember, we're here for justice, not genocide. Civilian targets are off limits." As the order went out, the real battle began. Earth's dreadnoughts, despite their massive size, moved with astonishing speed and grace. They split into smaller battle groups, each targeting a different Imperial world or space station. The first shots of the war were fired at the Crimson Nebula, a strategic Imperial fueling station. A squad of Earth destroyers, led by Captain Maria Rodriguez, swooped in on the unsuspecting facility. "Target their fuel tanks," Rodriguez ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let's give them a wake-up call they won't forget." Beams of energy lanced out from the Earth ships, striking the massive fuel containers with pinpoint accuracy. The resulting explosion lit up the nebula, turning the crimson gases into a dazzling fireworks display visible from light years away. As alarms blared across Imperial space, the true scale of Earth's attack became apparent. It wasn't just a raid or a punitive expedition. It was a full-scale invasion, striking at the very heart of the Empire's power. On Zalkron, the Empire's most fortified military world, General Tixta was jolted awake by the sound of explosions. He rushed to the command center, his exoskeleton clicking frantically against the crystal floors. "Report," he bellowed as he burst into the room. A junior officer, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with fear, turned to face him. "Sir, we're under attack. Hundreds of ships, no, thousands. They appeared out of nowhere. Our outer defenses are already down." Sixta's compound eyes widened in disbelief. He looked at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The attacking force was like nothing he had ever seen. Where had the humans been hiding such a fleet? "Launch all fighters," he ordered. "Activate the planetary shield, and get me a direct line to the Emperor. We need reinforcements." But as the Imperial forces scrambled to respond, they quickly realized they were outmatched. Earth's ships were not only more numerous but also technologically superior. Weapons that should have devastated the human vessels barely scratched their hulls. Meanwhile, Earth's attacks cut through Imperial defenses like they were made of paper. In orbit around the lush world of Eden Prime, an Imperial agricultural center, a group of Earth frigates engaged a squadron of Imperial cruisers. The Imperial ships, though larger, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, piloting the lead Earth frigate, grinned as she barrel-rolled her ship, avoiding a barrage of Imperial fire. "You boys ever hear of dogfighting?" she taunted over an open channel. "Let me teach you a thing or two." Her ship danced through space, drawing the Imperial vessels into a complex series of maneuvers. As they gave chase, focused entirely on Chen's ship, they failed to notice the rest of her squadron moving into position behind them. "Now," Chen yelled. A devastating volley of fire erupted from the Earth ships, catching the Imperial cruisers in a deadly crossfire. In moments, the pride of the Imperial fleet was reduced to drifting debris. As news of Earth's victories spread, something unexpected began to happen. On worlds long oppressed by the Empire, native populations rose up in revolt. They saw Earth's attack as a chance for freedom, an opportunity to throw off the yoke of Imperial rule. On the desert planet Xanadu, home to the insectoid hive race, millions of workers abandoned their posts. Led by a young queen named Clara, they stormed Imperial strongholds, their numbers overwhelming the shocked garrisons. Clara, standing atop a captured Imperial walker, addressed her people. "For generations, we have toiled under the Empire's whip. Today, we claim our freedom. Today, we stand with Earth." Similar scenes play out across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia found common cause in their resistance against the Empire. Earth's fleet, initially seen as invaders, were increasingly hailed as liberators. But the Empire was not defeated yet. As the initial shock wore off, they began to rally their forces. Emperor Zexkar, ensconced in his hidden fortress deep within the Galactic core, raged against this humiliation. "Deploy the Worldbreaker," he commanded, his voice trembling with fury. "Show these human upstarts the true might of the Eternal Empire." The Worldbreaker, the Empire's ultimate weapon, was a moon-sized battle station capable of destroying entire planets. As it emerged from its secret dock, its very presence sent waves of fear through nearby systems. Admiral Hawkins, receiving reports of the Worldbreaker's activation, knew they had to act fast. "All ships in Sector 7, converge on these coordinates," he ordered. "We need to take out that monstrosity before it can be used." What followed was the largest single engagement of the war. Thousands of ships from both sides clashed in a furious battle around the Worldbreaker. Space itself seemed to warp and twist from the energy being thrown around. On the bridge of the Avenger, Hawkins watched the battle unfold with growing concern. They were inflicting heavy losses on the Imperial fleet, but the Worldbreaker's defenses were holding. And if it got off even a single shot at an inhabited world? "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we've detected a weak point in the Worldbreaker's shields. A small gap, possibly a result of battle damage. But it's only big enough for a single fighter to slip through." Hawkins' mind raced. It was a slim chance, but it might be their only shot. He opened a channel to all nearby ships. "This is Admiral Hawkins. We need a volunteer for a critical mission. It's likely a one-way trip. Any takers?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, a familiar voice crackled over the comm. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Chen. I volunteer, sir." Hawkins closed his eyes briefly. Chen was one of their best pilots, but she was also young, with her whole life ahead of her. "Lieutenant, are you sure about this?" "With all due respect, sir," Chen replied, her voice steady. "They killed a child. Our child. I'm sure." Hawkins nodded, even though Chen couldn't see him. "Very well, Lieutenant. The hopes of Earth go with you. Godspeed." Chen's fighter broke away from the main battle, streaking towards the Worldbreaker. Imperial guns tracked her, filling space with deadly energy bolts. But Chen's piloting was beyond anything they had ever encountered. She rolled, juked, and spiraled, each maneuver bringing her closer to her target. As she approached the gap in the shields, Chen opened a channel to her family back on Earth. Mom, Dad, if you're hearing this, I love you, and I'm sorry. With that, she cut the engines and fired her maneuvering thrusters, sending her ship into a controlled tumble that took her straight through the gap in the Worldbreaker's shields. Alarms blared in her cockpit as she skimmed mere meters from the station's surface, searching for a vulnerable spot. There, an exposed power conduit. Chen reignited her engines, pushing them beyond their safety limits. As her ship began to break apart around her, she aimed straight for the conduit. "This is for Timmy," she whispered. The resulting explosion was visible from every ship in the battle. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a blooming flower of destruction, secondary explosions began to ripple across the surface of the Worldbreaker. On the Avengers Bridge, a cheer went up as they realized what had happened. Hawkins allowed himself a small smile. "Lieutenant Chen," he said softly, "you magnificent fool. You did it." The destruction of the Worldbreaker marked a turning point in the war. Imperial forces, already on the back foot, began to crumble. System after system fell or declared independence, swearing allegiance to Earth and its allies. As the battle entered its final stages, Admiral Hawkins received a priority message from Earth. President Chen's face appeared on his screen, looking tired but determined. "Admiral," she said, "you've done incredible work out there. But it's time to end this. We've received intelligence on the location of Emperor Zexkar's hidden fortress. I'm sending you the coordinates now. Bring him in, alive if possible. He'll stand trial for his crimes against humanity and the galaxy." Hawkins nodded. "Understood, Madam President. We'll get it done." As the Avenger and its escort fleet prepared for the final push, Hawkins addressed his crew one last time. "Men and women of Earth, you've fought bravely. You've avenged Timmy Smith and countless others who suffered under Imperial rule. Now let's finish this and bring peace to the galaxy." The ships jumped to hyperspace, ready to write the final chapter of the war. As they traveled, Hawkins couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From a species dismissed as primitive to the liberators of the galaxy, it had come at a terrible cost. But perhaps now, at last, there would be justice. As they emerged from hyperspace in sight of the Emperor's fortress, Hawkins straightened his uniform. Whatever happened next would shape the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. And he was ready to face it head-on. A new beginning. The UES Avenger dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of light, leading a fleet of Earth's most powerful warships. Before them loomed a massive space station, hidden within the swirling gases of a nebula. This was the secret fortress of Emperor Zexkar, the last bastion of the once mighty Galactic Empire. Admiral John Hawkins stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. "All ships, battle formation Delta," he commanded. "Prepare for heavy resistance. Remember, we want the Emperor alive if possible." As the Earth fleet moved into position, the station's defenses came to life. Energy beams lanced out, and swarms of fighter craft poured from hidden hangars. The final battle for the fate of the galaxy had begun. On the station's command deck, Emperor Zexkar watched the approaching human fleet with a mixture of fear and rage. His tentacles writhed nervously as he barked orders to his remaining loyal subjects. "Deploy all ships. Activate the quantum shield. We cannot fall to these primitives." His voice, once commanding and assured, now held a note of desperation. The space around the station erupted into chaos. Earth's ships, though outnumbered by the Empire's last-ditch defenses, fought with unmatched skill and determination. Fighters danced between larger vessels, energy weapons lit up the darkness, and explosions blossomed like deadly flowers. Aboard a small, swift attack craft, Captain Maria Rodriguez led a squadron towards a weak point in the station's shields. "This is for every being the Empire ever hurt," she muttered, her hand steady on the controls. "This is for Timmy." Her ship weaved through the debris of battle, avoiding fire from all sides. With pinpoint accuracy, She launched a volley of missiles at the shield generator. The explosion rocked the station, and a cheer went up across the Earth fleet as a section of the shield flickered and died. Shield breach in Sector 7. Hawkins' tactical officer reported. We have an opening. Hawkins nodded grimly. All ships, concentrate fire on that sector. Ground assault teams, prepare for boarding action. As the battle raged on, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings of all species gathered around communication devices, watching the conflict unfold. The Empire's iron grip on information had crumbled, and now everyone could see the truth. On the desert world of Xanadu, Queen Clara of the Hive stood before her people, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the holographic display of the battle. Look, she chittered excitedly. The humans fight not just for themselves, but for all of us. Today we witness the birth of a new era. Similar scenes played out on countless planets. Species that had been bitter enemies for millennia found themselves united in their hope for Earth's victory. The humans, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, had become a symbol of freedom and justice for the entire galaxy. Back at the battle, Earth's forces had breached the station's outer defenses. Troop transports streaked towards the docking bays, carrying elite soldiers ready to storm the Emperor's last stronghold. Among them was Sergeant Sarah Thompson, a veteran of Earth's toughest Special Forces unit. As her transport approached the station, she addressed her team. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. And remember, we're making history today. The transport shuddered as it landed in a chaotic docking bay. The moment the doors opened, Thompson and her team were in motion, their advanced armor deflecting enemy fire as they pushed deeper into the station. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Avenger, Admiral Hawkins received an urgent communication. The face of President Maria Chen appeared on his screen, her expression a mix of determination and concern. Admiral, she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment, we've just received critical intelligence. Our deep cover agents have confirmed that the Smiths, Timmy's parents, are being held prisoner on that station. The Emperor was keeping them as trophies. Hawkins felt a surge of anger and renewed purpose. Understood, Madam President. We'll get them out. He quickly relayed the information to the ground teams. Sergeant Thompson acknowledged the new objective, her voice tight with emotion. Copy that. We'll find them, sir. No one gets left behind. As Thompson's team fought their way through the station's winding corridors, they encountered fierce resistance. The Empire's last loyal soldiers fought with the desperation of those who knew their cause was lost. But against the skill and determination of Earth's finest, they stood little chance. Finally, after what felt like hours of intense combat, Thompson's team reached the detention level. They moved swiftly from cell to cell, scanning for human life signs. Here, one of her soldiers called out, I've got 2 human readings behind this door. Thompson rushed over, her heart pounding. With a nod to her team, she override the door controls. As it slid open, she came face to face with Tom and Sarah Smith, their eyes wide with disbelief and hope. It's okay, Thompson said softly, lowering her weapon. We're from Earth. We've come to take you home. Sarah Smith burst into tears, while Tom simply nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As Thompson's medic checked them over, she radioed back to command. We've got them. Sir, the Smiths are safe. A cheer went up across the Earth communications channels. But the mission wasn't over yet. They still had to capture the Emperor and end this war once and for all. High above the station, the space battle was reaching its climax. Earth's ships had the upper hand, but the Empire's defenses were still formidable. The Avenger shuddered as it took a direct hit, its advanced shields barely holding. Status report. Hawkins barked, steadying himself against his command chair. His tactical officer responded quickly. Shields at 30%, sir, but we've almost broken through their last line of defense. The station's main reactor is exposed. Hawkins nodded grimly. Target that reactor. Prepare to fire on my command. But before he could give the order, Another voice broke in over the comm channel. It was Sergeant Thompson. "Belay that order, Admiral. We've reached the Emperor's chambers. He's trying to escape." Inside the opulent throne room, Emperor Zexakar was frantically operating a control panel, his tentacles flying over the alien symbols. A sleek escape pod stood ready nearby, its engines humming with power. Thompson and her team burst into the room, weapons raised. "Step away from the controls," she shouted. "It's over, Emperor. Surrender now." Zexakar turned slowly, his alien features twisted into what might have been a sneer. "You think you've won," he gurgled in heavily accented English. "You understand nothing. The Empire has stood for millennia. It will outlast your insignificant species." With lightning speed, he lunged for a hidden weapon. But Thompson was faster. A single precise shot from her rifle struck the Emperor's arm, causing him to howl in pain and drop the weapon. "I said," Thompson repeated coldly, "surrender." As her team moved in to secure the Emperor, Thompson couldn't help but feel a sense of anticlimax. This creature, who had caused so much suffering, who had ordered the death of an innocent child, seemed small and pathetic now. She activated her comlink. "Admiral Hawkins, President Chen, this is Sergeant Thompson. We have the Emperor in custody. I repeat, Emperor Zexakar has been captured." The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On Earth, crowds poured into the streets, cheering and embracing strangers. On alien worlds, long-oppressed beings tasted freedom for the first time in generations. The great galactic empire, which had seemed eternal and unshakable, had fallen. In the days that followed, the work of rebuilding began. Representatives from Earth and the freed worlds gathered on neutral ground to discuss the future. President Chen, speaking for humanity, made it clear that Earth had no intention of simply replacing the Empire. "We fought this war not for conquest, but for justice," she declared to the assembled delegates. "We have no desire to rule over others. Instead, we propose a galactic federation, where all species have an equal voice." The idea was met with widespread approval. Many worlds, impressed by Earth's strength and integrity, even suggested that the new federation be headquartered on Earth itself. As for Emperor Zexakar, he was brought to Earth to stand trial for his crimes. The proceedings were broadcast across the galaxy, a testament to the new era of openness and justice. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, beings on countless worlds felt a sense of closure. Tom and Sarah Smith were given the honor of delivering the final statement at the trial. Sarah, her voice steady despite her tears, spoke directly to the former emperor. "You took our son from us," she said. "You thought his life meant nothing. But look around you. See how many lives he touched. See how his death sparked a revolution that freed the galaxy. Timmy will be remembered long after your empire is just a footnote in history books." As the Smiths left the courtroom, they were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. Lining the streets were thousands of beings, humans and aliens alike, all holding candles. A soft, mournful song filled the air. It was a tribute to Timmy, the boy whose tragic death had changed the course of galactic history. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered a new golden age, the Galactic Federation, with Earth playing a key role, ushered in an era of unprecedented peace and cooperation. Trade flourished between worlds that had once been bitter enemies. Scientific and cultural exchanges led to breakthroughs that benefited all. And on a small, out-of-the-way planet that had once been dismissed as a primitive backwater, a monument was erected. It stood in the heart of the new Federation capital, a simple statue of a young boy reaching for the stars. The plaque beneath it read, "In memory of Timmy Smith and all innocent victims of tyranny. May we never forget the price of freedom and the power of standing up for what's right." Visitors from across the galaxy came to pay their respects, to leave flowers or small tokens, and as they stood before the statue, many felt a sense of wonder at how the actions of one small planet had changed everything. Earth had sent 700,000 dreadnoughts to avenge a child. In doing so, they had not only gained justice, but had reshaped the very fabric of galactic society. The story of humanity's stand against the Empire became legend, told and retold across countless worlds. And somewhere, in the vastness of space, the spirits of those who had sacrificed everything for this new beginning. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the brave pilots and soldiers who had given their lives, looked down on the peaceful galaxy and knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The age of the Empire was over. The age of unity, of hope, of humanity's great adventure among the stars, had just begun.